Well, I know if I was a DJ in my last life, I would have been playing that song. What a beauty, from Earth, Wind, and Fire. I'm not sure the exact date, but looking at the early 70s, of course. Welcome, everybody, to Intertechnology, the Temple of Intertechnology, Saturday's Innerstanding. I'm Dr. Eric Biseca. This is where we meditate, dedicate, and make sense of what is not certain, what's behind the curtain in our wholeness, our wellness, our social world, and our new earth. Greetings and welcome on this Saturday. I'm giving prime thanks to the source of creation, the archangels, the guides, the ancestral spirits, the mother, the father, the family of humanity, and everyone on the call today. This is your forum for exploring the concepts related to holistic wellness and the social world and what we call the new earth. Be sure to tell your friends about it. And I hope we can hear from you today. If you're on the line, I'm glad that you're with us on this splendid Saturday. We're diving into a fascinating wholeness approach based to sleeping. And a very simple way of skipping much of the produce section at the grocery store by looking in your backyard. And yes, it's going to require putting your phone down, unless, of course, you're identifying plants, which I'm going to provide you with an easy website for taking a pic using your phone and identifying plants. But first, let's start out with a nice train roar here through Charlotte, North Carolina. That'll only last for a second. It's always very timely, and I think it gives me the surge of energy that I need here. In the fine city of Charlotte. There we go. We always like to start out with a nice little meditation, or at least conscious breathing session, where we can kind of tune in not only to the collective energy that we're holding ourselves, but to the greater cosmos and all the forces within and without and surrounding us. So let's take a moment here. And if you want to straighten up the spine, whether you're reclining, whether you're sitting in a chair, try to put that window down, there we go. Sitting in a chair or reclining, make sure the spine is somewhat straight and the head is propped up. And begin by taking a nice conscious breath, slowing the breath down as you become conscious of the breath. As we all breathe together, we become aware of the breath. We become aware of that life force within us. Slowing the breath down connects us to larger things, greater things beyond us and within us. As you become aware of the breath, realizing that you are an observer. You're an observer to your surroundings. You're an observer to your emotions. You're an observer to your thoughts. And even just to your life. And as you watch yourself participate in this, knowing that you're watching from a masterful place, a higher place, if you will. And the breath is a reminder of that reality. Let's just go ahead and smile kind of naturally, just kind of a natural, organic smile. Smile at your inner self. Smile from your heart center. Smile at your being, as if you're looking at yourself from above, looking down on your life, looking down on how you face challenges and how you do your best every day. And feel good about that. Let's just feel good about that. All the good, the bad, the ugly, the challenging, the confusion, how we make our way through all of it. And how we still emerge every morning to address the new day, giving thanks for our breath, the breath of life every day, every morning, to rise to new challenges and new heights. Go ahead and smile down at your core, your belly. Smile at the area in your stomach, just below the belly button, activating this part of your body. This is a great energy center called the Tantien by the ancient Chinese. We want to connect with this center by breathing down consciously through that area and sending good, positive emotions, emotions of self-love as we breathe through the belly, slowing that breath down. And the coolness of the air as it enters the nostrils. And we notice the warmth of the air as we exhale. And just breathing down into that diaphragmatic place for a moment. We connect with everybody else. We connect with everybody on the line. We not only connect with our greater self, but we connect with everybody who's with us, everybody who's not with us. We connect with all those who are gone before us. But most importantly, we connect with that place of self-love, and we give ourselves just a moment of recognition. Smiling down at our organs, smile at the kidneys in the lower back. Breathe into them. Smile at the liver and breathe into the upper stomach area. Picture that life force flowing through. And go ahead and let's finish with a nice smile down at the heart. Pretend the heart is smiling and you're looking at it and smiling back. This is a way that we cultivate self-love. It's a way that we recognize who we are within and we remember, right? All right, Ashe, give thanks, everybody. I'm glad you were able to tune into that moment. Let's move forward here today, and we're going to talk a little bit about, well, we're going to talk quite a good deal about sleep. And maybe we've joined in the call today because we're interested in learning a few things or picking up a few things about sleeping better that might help us, or maybe we're just incidentally here. But I promise we have some very, very important and pertinent information to share that needs to get out there about this very important aspect of life. I'm sure we'd all agree, right? Before we talk about sleep, let's first talk about night and day. This is where I like to start. We're talking about, nature, and as obvious as nature may portray itself and spell itself out for us, we do not pay attention to it. I'm sure we'd all agree, right? Whether it's by default, but we do not pay attention to all of the things that nature has to offer, including the knowledge of our circadian rhythms. That crucial part that we miss is really aligning our daily activities with our circadian rhythms. And these are these mental and physiological changes that occur in a 24-hour time period that are based on the movements of the sun. And in larger cycles, the moon and the planets as well. So we also have to remember that the sun, the moon, and the planets are inside of us. Their energies are within us as well as without us, if you will, right? So this light and darkness that occurs in our reality on this plane is really the single largest influence on circadian rhythms that we have. Besides food and the temperature and the physical environment around us, all of those affect our behavior and our emotions. But these circadian rhythms and the aspects of light and darkness really are the number one determinant of our behavior and our emotions. And it seems like nobody talks about this, right? Really. We can go to an advanced psychology class or paranormal psychology or a lot of different schools of thought, but we have to start seeing the body as an independent, we have to stop seeing the body as an independent organism and see it as a kind of energy transmitter and receptor that's modulated by both the inner and the outer cosmos, or the universe, or the omniverse, whatever you want to call it. So we'll get back to these rhythms in a moment, but these rhythms, of course, are really modulated and aligned with the planets, and those energies influence us heavily and what's going on in our body and our mind throughout the day and night. Let me ask you all a question here. Have you ever heard or seen footage, and then this will kind of wake everybody up, or witnessed animals procreating when it's dark outside? They don't, right? Maybe you've seen it. I don't know. I haven't seen it, but they don't, right? We all know that sex is for procreation, but it's still an animalistic part of us. And when we're different, of course, than animals, because we have sex for pleasure. At least that's, in theory, what we have become. At least that's what we've kind of evolved or devolved into. But if sex is an animalistic act, if you will, why do humans mostly have sex at night? Some would say because our economically driven lifestyle, we don't have time for making love during the day. But do people realize that it's not energetically ideal at all? The actual problem of this occurring at night is really not something that aligns with our circadian rhythms. So let's say we take that question across the board and we say, we ask, when do the birds and the chickens start chirping and singing? It's actually before sunrise, right? As we know. So why do we sleep in until 9 or 10 a.m.? I'll put it out there and say, many would say, and I agree with them for the most part, is that we're depressed. Of course, this is when it's done on a consistent basis, for a long period of time. And the point is that our circadian rhythms are off at this point because we've been handed down, what we've been handed down, through our culture has either exhausted us to the point where we can't get up in the morning, or we're just so used to it, we've embedded that program into our system, and we've been socialized by it. It's become a huge determinant of our sleep patterns. So our sleep patterns, when we look at how we sleep, they're heavily influenced by the circadian rhythms and the socialization process, our culture's interference of those rhythms. And I think a lot of you understand what I mean and would agree that nature is telling us to go to sleep when the sun goes down. The moon, which governs the pituitary gland, and the sun, which governs the pineal gland, each trigger a certain production level of sleep chemicals and neurotransmitters, right? Melatonin being the primary one. So the melatonin is produced in the pituitary gland. And so therefore, if we're up staring at the TV or maybe gallivanting in the street after the sun has gone down, we miss that very crucial first phase of melatonin production, which occurs really in waves. And the first wave is when the sun goes down, that moment. So let's say we could call it the bad news, but most of us have embedded this habit into our routine over many years, right? But the good news is that really you can adjust very easily and start getting yourself out of bed gradually and going to bed earlier by slowly implementing a change, and it'll happen, within weeks sometimes. And let me tell you, I really believe that it's worth doing, not only to get that good night's sleep and that consistent sleep, and to find yourself in sync with the circadian rhythms that really constitute our essence, not only for that purpose, but you're going to mentally, physically just feel so much better throughout the day. And you all know, I'm sure you can imagine, I've had my phases of life where I've experienced insomnia at times, and There's times where I've slept very well, and life takes us through these twists and turns where we kind of experience it all, But lately, I found in my life, sleep is really a crucial aspect, and there's really not much that could be sacrificed. There should be not much sacrificed, unless, of course, we have a young one that we have to wake up for and take care of. But then after that, the first thing when we look at our own self is, are we sleeping? Are we getting that rest? And so I myself am in bed by 8:30, 9 o'clock. I don't say it shamefaced. I'm very happy and very energized throughout the day. For the most part, I sleep like a baby, and I enjoy my sleep, thoroughly. I actually look forward to it, which I do remember at one point in life not looking forward to it and not being able to even fall asleep. So ideally, we are to rise in these wee hours in the morning, right? When the birds are chirping, it's a time that the ancient Vedic people called the Amrit Velya. The Amrit Velya meaning the crack between the two worlds, right? And this is usually around 4 a.m. to 5 a.m. at most. This is the time period when the lungs are active. You see, our circadian rhythms really activate our body in a very rhythmic and sequential way. So as the clock turns, as the sun turns, if you will, the body, different parts of the body and different organs are active at that time. Now, what does that mean that they're active? Well, that's when they are most productive. That's when they're cleaning themselves out. That's when they're most to be utilized. Energetically, they're most charged. So if you're getting up around 4 in the morning at this Amrit Velya, when the lungs are active, the lungs are active from around 3:30 to 6, you'd say. And I'm being, as far as the time, I'm just talking about when the sun's basically at 60 degrees, in the sky. If you're up around this time, this is, of course, the time when you want to do your breathing exercises, because the lungs are actually begging you to do this, to strengthen them, to create that neurotransmission, of cell messengers, to open up the lungs and to get those cells breathing. When those cells are breathing and those neurotransmitters are firing, then our cells are thinking. They're able to think more. So this Amrit Velya is such a wonderful time to do breathing exercises and meditation, of course, right, in the morning. It's said, as a side note, that this is the hour when the angels are circling the earth, literally, right, the crack between the two worlds. So if we're in bed by 9 and up at 4 or 5, that gives us our solid 8 hours sleep, which is about the average needed. Now, everybody's different. Nobody could agree on one set time of sleep. There's been times in my life, and of course people I've known, where you only need to sleep 6 hours or 7 hours, to get what you need. And then maybe when the season changes or you drop into winter, then you grab your 8 or 9 hours average. But the body will, of course, figure it out a lot more easy when your circadian rhythms are in line, okay, when you're going by the phases of light and dark. Some constitutions and some diet types require less. So if we're sitting in the rainforest all day eating greens and picking fruit, we have no stress, we wouldn't need more than a few hours sleep, right? And by the way, the more flesh that one eats, the more likely they sleep in and need that extra sleep. They require extra sleep, right? I mean, we could see this reflected in the big cats and the sleeping patterns of the lions, for example. They sleep up to 19 or 20 hours per day. So lions, incidentally, and most of the other mammals procreate before noon. Right, that time when the sun is bringing life, not removing itself from our earth plane, but bringing itself forth. And this is a very sort of spiritual time. It's a very sacred time, going back to the Druids and the Kemetics. And the Kemetic people, of course, in the Nile Valley, called this time of day when the being should procreate. Appropriately, they called it Ta Amun Ra, which means time of creation. So it is the time to create. And if we're sleeping at that time, what are we saying, right? What kind of mode are we in if we're sleeping during that time? So it's something to think about. Most know that a healthy man wakes up in the morning with an erect penis, right? Unless he's been drinking whiskey all night, in which case he's not procreating anything, maybe some foul urine. But otherwise, he's not getting enough rest, or is nutrient deficient, or energy depleted in some way. Maybe there's some adrenal depletion going on there. But again, this is the time of procreation, right? And so what in our culture has pushed us, what in our socialization process has pushed us to want to, or to feel that sex and intercourse is to be had at night, right? How has that evolved over time? That's a whole new question, but you have to wonder, really. All that said, adjusting your sleep cycle is the number one thing you can do to improve your quality of sleep, hands down. And most of us who are experiencing sleep problems are not doing so due to stress. I firmly believe this. I think that most of us are experiencing insomnia due to excessive dopamine surges throughout the day, from addictions to sugar, caffeine, technology, social media, click culture, impulse culture, or other vices, which are very stress related, of course, but indirectly. So we're either responding to stress by doing those things, but we're certainly not creating the stress, and we're not responding to the stress by not being able to sleep. What we really need to be doing is moving our body as much as we move our mind, so that our body and our mind are in sync. And when both of them are tired, we fall asleep more easily. But if we're moving our mind all day, and our wheels are spinning and spinning, of course, in our physiology, our body isn't able to keep up with that. It's just producing the adrenaline needed to think about this stuff all day and to respond to the thoughts that we have. Then we're creating a situation where, we need dopamine. We need that extra sugar, that caffeine, and one vice leads to another, right? So we need to move the body. We need to learn how to move consciously and breathe consciously with the body, match our breathing with our body. And when we're doing things like capoeira, yoga, any martial arts or conscious movement, then we're aligning ourselves more with the circadian rhythms in our body, right? And aligning our mind with our body, so that when we're tired, when we're genuinely tired, our whole being is tired. Our body and our mind is tired, and that's when we go to sleep. So let's talk briefly about insomnia, or broken sleep patterns, if you will. And there's of course a whole science to sleep, and then there's a lot to be said for this. But all in all, there's a couple of questions you can ask yourself, and a couple of categories that you could find yourself in. One of them is, what kind of sleep pattern do you feel that you're experiencing at the moment? What season is it? And does it change by season? Does it change by career, choice of career, or the type of work you're doing? When you have to, it's almost worth, many sleep practitioners will tell you to start keeping a sleep diary, over time, which goes in line also with your dreams. But your sleep diary, it's kind of an account of when you're sleeping and when you're not. And it could be seasonal, it could be weekly, the changes that occur. Are you waking up after about 2 hours of sleep? Let's say you're falling asleep fairly easily. You kind of just pass out, maybe from exhaustion, or you're watching the TV or whatever, but then you get up after about 2 hours or so. If this is the case, there's a large chance that it's due to your meal patterns and when you're eating. And this is also one of the third reasons, maybe third or fourth reason, why we're experiencing sleep difficulties in our culture, is because of what we're eating. Of course, diet is connected with everything, what we're putting in our body. And particularly when it comes down to sleep, what are we putting into our body after the sun begins to go down? In other words, after about 1 or 2 o'clock in the afternoon, what are we eating at that point? Because what we're eating at that point has to take extra energy to digest. While the sun's rising and up until the noon, of course, when our biggest meal should be, by the way, and most of our protein-based meals, if we do eat meat, around noon is the best time to eat it, from 11 to 2, you would say. But after that noon hour, what are we putting into our body? How much of it? And how close to the sunset are we doing it? So if it's less than 2 hours before bed, roughly, you need to change that. We can fall asleep easily, because we're exhausted by that time. But if we've eaten a fairly large meal at, 7 o'clock, let's say, and we want to go to bed by 9, that meal isn't even close to being digested yet. It made its way down the esophagus, but it's just about the beginning phase of being processed fully and absorbed, certainly not absorbed at all. So we fall asleep at that time, when that beginning, that ingestion process, if you will, begins. Then we're only falling asleep because our muscles are exhausted and our brain is exhausted. We wake up because our digestion has been working so hard that it triggers us. It triggers a certain cortisol release, and next thing you know, we have to wake up because our body's not able to rest. It's working on digestion. So everybody's different, of course. Some of us get up after that second or third hour and we walk around a little, we don't know what to do. We go back to the internet or sit on the phone or watch some TV or something, or maybe some of us try to meditate, or we eat something. I would advise trying to sit down and meditate a little bit. If you're not used to meditating, it's difficult to do that, of course, especially in the middle of the night. But that's about the best thing you can do to get yourself to go back to bed, if you do know the art of meditation fairly well. If not, taking a shower and finishing with cold water, which is not very inviting, of course, if we know, in the middle of the night. But if you want to fall back to sleep, one of the best things you can do to trigger that process again is to get in some cold water, right? To kind of, and what that does is it resets the chemical composition in the body and allows that melatonin, the production, to start back up again. And so it's never fun, but believe me, I've had many a night where, I'm up at 2 or whatever, and I have to wake up at 6 for work, or, I have to wake up at 5, and I know I have to get back to bed. I don't feel like sleeping, but I'm tired. It's a mix and match of just different emotions and different physiological states. But I jump in that cold shower and kind of tough it out for a minute or two after it's turned on warm for a little while. And then I come out of that shower, you make your meditation, you sit on your rug, you sit on your mat for a little bit, and you go into your nice meditation. And so many times you'll find that it's almost like picking up that wave, when you're on the beach and you were doing your body surfing when you were a kid, or maybe you're still doing it. But it's like picking up that nice wave of melatonin that comes in, and, it'll knock you out pretty well right away. But again, it's not worth having that late meal. And oftentimes, a lot of us will crave that sugar later at night. I know I experienced that, and I still do sometimes experience it, where, we feel like we have to get it in. There's something missing from the day, or it's almost like a food anxiety, that comes in, a craving. Of course, it's an addiction, but when that occurs, and we need to eat that sugar at night, that's when we'll wake up, in that second or third hour of sleep. Because, again, we're stimulating the body in one way that it can't reach that REM sleep, that rapid eye movement, that deep sleep, those delta waves, that we need until maybe later on. So anyway, another question to ask yourself is, are you not able to fall asleep right away? If you're laying in bed at night, let's say, and maybe you're on the phone a little bit, or you just checked out some things before going into the bedroom. A lot of us are not able to fall asleep right away, and this is something that really I haven't experienced as much, but I'm familiar with it. And one of the questions that I'd ask at this point is, what is the connection that we're having with technology also, right? And I'm sure you've heard it from others before, but if we're having that if we're having that phase of maybe scrolling and pixelating ourselves, watching the screen intensely, or even bringing the phone into the bed, let alone the bedroom, that is stimulating the mind and getting the mind to race in a way, look at the whole act of scrolling and watching. It's just one image after another, after another, another. So we're stimulating the mind in a way that is allowing for that extra production of cortisol and adrenaline to get us going, to entertain us. And then that entertainment stimulation carries over as soon as we turn the TV off and the phone off. And really, everybody, this is a very, very crucial thing that we have to recognize, is that just because we turn the TV off or we leave the phone off and we put it away and then we lay our head back down, we are far from disconnected from what we just viewed. Everything that our whole physiological response to what we just viewed is still being processed in our mind. And so I like to really stand by the proposal that if you're going to stop eating at least 2 or 3 hours before bed, I cut down, and I try to practice this myself, but I try not to look at any screens at least an hour before I go to bed as well. And I find that really helps. In fact, if you have some plants where you could take a walk and look at some trees, put your eyes on some green or some things that relax you, maybe a painting or something that sends those types of signals to the brain, that is optimal. That is optimum. I don't even bring my phone into my bedroom. It never makes its way into my bedroom. And I find that that's just kind of an intuitive thing that I've been realizing can help more and more, Maybe some of us are the type that, you have to have the TV on in your bedroom. And, you fall asleep, and maybe you get up later, about 3 or 4, maybe you get a good, 4 or 5 hours in, but you watch TV before you go to bed. Try it. Try turning that TV off. And even if you have to suffer a couple of nights and you're twiddling your thumbs while you're laying in bed, I really believe it's worth taking that routine out. I would take it right out of the bedroom. Falling asleep to TV is something that we've grown accustomed to, of course, because of our culture, but it really disturbs the sleep and disturbs the unconscious mind, which is where memories and the spiritual, energetic connections are most profound, right? And this is, of course, the landscape of the dreams. This is the unconscious mind. So when these images are being projected in the mind, then the unconscious isn't able to emerge, right? And that's what we want. When the unconscious mind emerges in the dream world, becomes our reality, that's when we go into our deep sleep. We go into our rapid eye movement, right? But if our mind is still looking and responding to these images from the TV screen, the unconscious mind is far, far away. It's a distant reality, right? So anyway, these are a couple of questions that you can ask yourself. I think some good general practice type of questions as well, if none of that makes sense, is do you enjoy your work? Do you enjoy what you're doing on a daily basis? Is it something that you find fulfillment in? Is it something you're aligned with? In a sense of sort of a spiritual calling. Is there any sort of calling involved? Does it match your archetype? Your cosmic archetype, if you will. Can you be, in a sense, can you identify with an archetype maybe that you know about yourself, something that gives you that satisfaction? I don't use the word purpose too often, but it could have landed with a certain purpose. But it's really important when we're not spiritually in tune and we're not doing the work that we feel is natural for us to do on Earth, then that's one of the deepest things that is constantly cropping up in the subconscious mind, right? What should I be doing? What do I need to be doing? And that itself becomes a stress in itself. As many of us know, I certainly have experienced it in my life as well. So let's talk about what to do, otherwise. Meditation is of course, a wonderful tool. And I recommend meditation for everything, every ailment, every challenge, every imbalance that one could run into, whether it's healing pain or scars, emotional scars, physical scars, whether it's acquiring more energy, whether it's balancing out our hormones and chemicals and neurotransmitters, whatever it is, whether it's battling chronic illness. Meditation is a tool that is it's incomparable. You can't. It's beyond value as well, right? So meditating, or at least sitting down, sitting on maybe putting some rugs underneath you and sitting on the chair and with a straight spine, and doing that conscious breathing for 5 or 10 minutes, and just observing yourself, observing your breath, slowing down. Whether you do it in the morning, I usually do one in the afternoon as well, for about 10 minutes when I get home from work. It's really a great time to reset those chemicals, secretions that occur in the stomach, and that's why we breathe down to the diaphragm. But we reset those chemical secretions in the stomach, and as well as the pituitary gland, and in the inner brain as well, right? So meditation is really a practice that will benefit you during the day. If you do that, take time to do it during the day, it'll help you sleep better at night. So if you have not started a regular meditation practice, and a simple one, there's Vipassana, which is a very simple, nice way to begin meditating. There's various styles, but I like Vipassana because it allows you to just observe yourself, observe your thoughts, observe your emotions, and step outside of yourself, your maddening life, which we all have in a way, and just observe it and look and say, wow, this is happening, but I'm not really fully participating. I'm really just observing all this, and I'm playing a role here. Right? When we're able to do that and step outside of ourselves, then we're able to relieve ourselves of the pressure that we're putting on ourselves. That's something that can take you a long way when it comes down to sleep, right, and getting that internal peace. I don't recommend taking any melatonin. I've taken it in the past. I really don't think that it helps that much. It certainly never helped me that much. And my research, I've dived into quite a bit of research when it comes down to taking melatonin supplements. And what I found that on a short-term basis, there's nothing that's, very harmless. And especially if it's taken out or parceled over a period of time, it's not going to certainly do any significant long-term damage. Now, if you have to take melatonin every day and every night to fall asleep, then you're getting into a different category a little bit. It does disrupt what I call the inner technology and the efficacy of the natural system. Anything that we have to take every day, it doesn't matter what it is. It could be an herb, but if we have to take that thing to promote a certain function in the body, it's going to disrupt our natural system, right? Which maybe sometimes that's needed. But your own melatonin production occurs under certain conditions. You mentioned the sun and the moon. The moon really, at the end of the day, is very important to that production, and both the pituitary and the pineal gland. But those conditions that are really coordinated with what are called, some people call them GABA or GABA aminobutyric acid, which is a neurotransmitter. And I don't want to go too far into and not that I can go too far, but that neurotransmitter is very important. It's a chemical messenger in the brain, but that coordination between the GABA neurotransmitter and the production of melatonin is something that is done naturally by the body. Those two are produced with reference to each other in a sort of a pattern in a specific coordinated effort. And what the GABA does is it slows down your brain, the neurons that fire, that are results of our thoughts, and it blocks specific signals in the central nervous system. So when you start taking extra melatonin that you don't produce yourself, you disrupt that coordination with the GABA production and throw things off over time, right? So you throw off that whole balance that's occurring. Right? We are naturally balanced creatures or beings. We're both. We're creatures and beings, but we're balanced by nature. And so we always have to remember to return to balance. The body wants to return to balance, right? It wants to return to homeostasis. That's its natural state. We're always working to return to that place. So that's why we heal naturally, because the body and mind already know this. I actually use a wonderful cannabis oil when my sleep patterns get thrown off. And it happens, of course, to the best of us. But this oil is made from organic high-grade cannabis from the female indica plant out of St. Elizabeth, Jamaica, where I stayed and did some work last year for a while. So this product has no isotopes. 95 to 99% of what you see out there on the market is made with isotopes, which are the frozen molecules that allow for the expansion of the molecule and the expansion of the drug and the results of it, so that you can get more out of it. But when the product has no isotopes, then its THC levels stay down below usually 2 or 3%. So the proper dosage is not going to get you high, but it'll get you to bed. And the reason why is because most sleeping pills, people take, of course, very, very powerful sleeping aids or supplements. You can even throw melatonin in there. Most of those don't mess or coordinate with anything having to do with what we call the endocannabinoids in the brain. And the cannabinoids that are naturally in our brain match with the cannabinoids in the indica plant, the female indica plant, particularly when it comes down to sleeping. And so those many cannabinoid receptors that we have in our brain, they're already in the central and the peripheral nervous system, so there's no disruption or dependency that's created from taking this particular oil and oils that are like it. So this particular cannabis oil leaves the system alone, and that's why I like it. And it's something to where even still, I try not to take it unless I need to, just as anything else. But when doing the research, and they work with this particular strand down in Mona, which is the University of the West Indies, Mona campus in Kingston, and they're actually using it to treat cancer at this point because it's such a wonderful plant. And it's, like I said, it's a non-isotope female indica plant with just the right properties, just the right amount of THC that helps. It really aid the sleep if you take it a little bit throughout the day. And if you don't have time to meditate, or if you're just kind of thrown to the fray with work and family, we know that it's difficult to reset yourself. So anyway, if anybody's interested in that product, let me know in the chat or during the question time. I do have it available direct from the source down there. So, but next I want to talk a little bit about herbs and sleep, because I'm sure many of us associate certain herbs with sleeping better. And all of us, what we have to remember, of course, with herbs and herbalism in general and using herbs, is that we all have different constitutions. That is, we all have these makeups, these elemental makeups that make us unique, exponentially unique, of course, right? We're not all, some of us are earth, some of us are water, some of us are fire. No, it goes beyond, way beyond that. We all have this very, very unique set of constitutions and dominant elements, or what we would call our prakriti, which is our dosha, if you will, from the Ayurvedic tradition. But we each respond differently based to herbs and medicine and everything based on these constitutions that make us who we are. And so when it comes down to taking herbs, and I learned this firsthand many years ago, for the most part, to match an herb with a certain constitution is a certain science. And that's why it's not good, even if you just go online and look up well, which herb should I start taking for high blood pressure or whatever. You're really taking a risk. Usually it's not a high risk. Usually it's nothing that can really hurt you badly or do anything worse. But oftentimes it will throw your system off if you just start taking an herb without making any connections to your constitution or what else is going on in your body. And believe me, I've seen this happen, not only to myself, but to many others. So when you talk about herbs for sleep and herbs to help us relax or go to bed, for the most part, there are a few that affect us all in the same way. And I think really we should focus on those. Not to say that it's going to be exactly the same way, but my claim is that the herb that you could take for sleep, in order for it to be effective, should match the condition that's disturbing your sleep. So I'll say that again. The herb that you should take for sleep, in order for it to be effective, should match the condition that is disturbing your sleep. So, for example, if you're not sleeping because you have maybe an intestinal issue, right? Maybe your food's not being absorbed, or you have a form of IBS or colitis, leaky gut, then the herb that best matches that one is chamomile, right? You take chamomile at night or in the evening, a nice cup of chamomile after dinner. It's very safe. Of course, at a medicinal dose, you can put 2 bags of chamomile in your tea to have any effect whatsoever. Taking it during the day might make you a little drowsy, but a nice chamomile cup of tea after dinner, it will help with stomach issues. It will appease the stomach, and then, of course, allow through the stomach a lot easier. Now, if you had a plate of fried chicken and you think you're going to, drink some chamomile and everything's going to be nice and hunky-dory when you go to sleep and you'll be in bed all night, then, you might have something else come. But chamomile, for the most part, is a very safe herb. It's a very, very soothing herb, and it really helps relax the intestinal lining, and the ganglia in the intestine respond well to chamomile for mostly everybody. I've never seen any issues or experienced any issues with chamomile, even taking quite a bit of it, for a long period of time, that is, as well. And many herbs you can take for up to 2 weeks or a month, and then, you want to lay off of it. But chamomile is something that you can take pretty regularly. The disadvantage is the chamomile is not very strong. It doesn't have that sort of knockout punch that is going to keep you, asleep all night, especially if you've been experiencing sleep problems. So it'll help your belly to rest, and it'll soothe the solar plexus, and of course soothe the intestines and the adrenals to a certain extent, and it'll give you a little deeper sleep once you fall asleep, right? But it's not going to knock you out right away and put you to sleep. Let's talk about another herb, one that I've used with other people, with people that I've partnered with, is lavender. Especially I found for the Pitta constitution, those of us who are kind of fiery, we have that endless energy, the fiery type, who can't go to bed because they're working and they're naturally energetic. And even some of us who believe that we work better at night, right? We just can't really sleep at night. We fall asleep really late or early in the morning. If you want to get yourself back on a good schedule of sleep, I would use the assistance of lavender, especially if you're that type. And for lavender to work very well, it has to be taken throughout the day in increments. It's different than chamomile. Chamomile you just want to take in the evening, but lavender you can kind of take early on in the day, and it has this kind of slow, gradual effect of making you more tired near bedtime. Okay, so again, the medicinal amounts are needed. You need to take a couple of cups during the day, maybe 3, I would say, 3 cups of lavender separately. I used to know a woman that made lavender cookies, so that was even better than tea. But I don't know how much of an effect that they had as far as the sleep goes. But it's a wonderful aromatic herb, and you can put it in the bathtub as an essential oil. It's just tremendous in that way. Anyway, the medicinal amounts are needed, and the more you take, these herbs, the more you influence other areas of the system. So you have to be aware of that. So if you want to, if you're going to take lavender and chamomile together, and you want to do that over an extended period of time, you're going to have sort of some things that change it physiologically in the system, and you have to kind of, monitor yourself and be very cautious of what you're doing. If you think you're just going to mix and match and give it a whirl and start taking more than 2 or 3 herbs to try to address something or to try to address multiple imbalances, you're really taking a chance, when you do something like that. So anyway, give me a call if you feel like you want to address something, and I might have some good advice for you. I'm certainly not going to steer you in the wrong direction, but make sure that you're cautious before you make a choice like that, and you consult an herbalist or a naturopath, somebody that knows a little bit about it. Some of the more potent herbs, when we get into the next category, that stimulate those GABA signals, like I was talking about earlier, which is the amino acid, and also kind of synthesize the adrenaline body and work with the adrenals, are hops and ashwagandha. I'm sure some of you have heard of ashwagandha, the Ayurvedic herb. Kava kava is another one. And California poppy, which is also used for depression. You're getting into some, a little bit next tier, next level, stronger herbs that need to be taken, I'd say no more than 2 weeks incrementally of those, when you get into the regular usage of them. But you'll notice a difference with those, okay? The rest of the show, I'm not going to get into the details of those herbs. You can kind of do your own research on those, but I found those to be very effective, and especially remembering the lavender and the chamomile, for starters. Some of us would probably just make a nice adaptation to our sleeping pattern by trying to go to bed a little early and having a cup of chamomile, a nice full medicinal dose of chamomile after dinner, and you'll fall into a nice sleep pattern. I think that would cover most people's sleep deficiencies. So speaking of herbs, I did mention that there are 3 awesome herbs growing right under our feet here, free at this time of year, given that you're in the woodlands or some area of the U.S. where there's a deciduous forest. And I'll describe these herbs in a minute as far as what they look like. You'll be able to identify these plants through a simple website where I can give you can just take a picture, a quick upload of a picture, and it'll tell you exactly whether or not it's the plant that you think it is. I'll give you that site in a minute here. I just wanted to start out by one of my pet peeves, and I do have a couple pet peeves. I think the older we get, the more peeves we acquire. I haven't gotten rid of any peeves. I think I've acquired more as I've gotten older, but one of them is, besides the leaf blowers, I don't have any more of these leaf blowers, and I don't mean the actual people, nothing against them, but walking around blowing leaves and sometimes not even blowing leaves, but just blowing air or dust into the air with a generator, carrying a diesel charged pack on your back around these corporate offices and corporate properties is just mind-blowing to me. But along with that, you'll notice, of course, more and more this time of year, the weed whacker, right? All the weed whacking being done. And it's so ironic, maybe not ironic, but at this time of year, to clean the liver, coming back to our circadian rhythms, which is now, when we get into the seasonal cycles of those, there are certain seasons where certain organs should be kind of tended to. This is the time of year where we clean the upper GI tract. All right, the winter is really when we clean the lower GI tract, which is the colon. But this time of year, we start with the liver, and the herbs that are growing for the liver, I kid you not, are literally sprouting under our feet. The greatest herbalist that I've learned from and that I studied with for many years told me quite a few amazing things. One of them was that so often and more often than not, the herb that somebody needs in their life is growing in the immediate area that they live, right outside of their house. And believe me, I've witnessed it. It's true. As sure as the sun comes up, I've seen it. And so many times when we talk about the liver, we see that the herbs that we need, that the particular herb that we need for the liver is growing everywhere in abundance all over. The mother, the great mother provides us with what we need, that she's putting it right in front of us, right under our noses, I should say right under our phones. But we're missing it probably because we're looking at our phones instead of looking at around at the plants and what nature is providing for us, and the blossoms that are around, and the bees and the things that are happening around us. But I cannot say enough about the weed whacker, first of all, and about the chopping down of and the killing of dandelion. Dandelion, this beautiful solar-based energetic liver tonic, is absolutely incredible and should be taken this time of year by everybody who has access to it. Memories of dandelion from my mother would tell me how her mother, when they came from Italy, their mother would have them run up to the hill, what they call the hillside, at the time, run up the hill and pull dandelion for the salads. The children would go up to the hill and pick the dandelion and bring them back for the salads. And then they'd make wine from the dandelion flowers. So anyway, it was a plant that's been thoroughly integrated, with our ancestral heritage, at least the Eurasian and American peninsulas. And we see that it has all of the properties to help clean out the liver, right? The roots are mainly used to stimulate the appetite, but they're very, of course, they're powerful for the liver and gallbladder problems. And they're known to clean those valves out and strengthen the tendons around those valves in the liver so that the liver can push out the toxins a lot easier. So those roots are used, they're great for strengthening the liver, and the leaves of the dandelion are used more as a diuretic to help the body get rid of fluid, of course, if it has too much fluid that's building up. It also lowers blood pressure, regulates the blood sugar. You're talking about vitamins A, B, C, and D. And dandelion has a very balanced mineral content of just the right amount of iron, potassium, and zinc, that combination that helps maintain the blood sugar levels in the body. So someone dealing with diabetes or someone who's pre-diabetic can certainly benefit by having a cup of dandelion tea on a regular basis. It's a fairly, I would say, a medium strength herb. When it comes down to it, the root is a little bit stronger, but this has been used by indigenous people for as far back as we can go, including the indigenous people of the Americas, right? So you take it the first thing in the morning. Dandelions to be taken in the morning, and I would put it with some ginger. I take it just during a liver cleanse or any other period of time. I take it for about 2 weeks before giving it a little bit of a break. And that's kind of my rule of thumb from what I've seen over the years. I've probably been studying herbs for about 20 years at this point. And an herb that is average strength, average potency or above, you want to take for about 2 or 3 weeks and then take a little break from it, But pairing an herb like that with ginger in the morning is an amazing practice, and I highly recommend it, at this time of year especially. So I would load up on the dandelion, and nature really is the proof. It's growing. As long as it's not getting weed whacked, it's growing right under our feet. Make sure you clean it, though, when you bring it in. Another amazing plant, mustard garlic. I remember pulling it out, even when I lived in Philly and up in Pennsylvania and Pittsburgh area, would pull out. Mustard garlic is growing everywhere. It's growing on every block along with the dandelion, but it's usually more near tree line areas, or what you would call edges. and you can identify it first by smelling it, right? It has this antiseptic component, and it's used for wounds, primarily, and it was as for native peoples in this region, it was used for wounds. It was used to mix with food, and it was a diuretic as well. And it's rich in vitamin A, B, and C, and E. So, you could put the leaves in your salad. They're not really crispy like a lettuce type of leaf, but they'll bring some flavor. They'll give you that kind of shallot, garlic type of flavor in the salad. You don't want to load it up too much because it is kind of, it's a strong tasting plant, but you can definitely sense it right away. And oftentimes such a perfume reminds us of what it's doing to our body, really cleaning our body out, cleaning the blood for sure. So finally, we have chickweed. Chickweed, named from in this country because the chickens take to it. The chickens eat it by choice. They go right after it. And the young shoots of the chickweed are edible, and they've been used, as salad greens. In homeopathy, the plant is used to relieve rheumatic pains, for rheumatoid arthritis, and psoriasis, which is autoimmune stuff. So chickweed's actually an invasive plant, but there's so many benefits. It opens up the bronchioles and relieves asthma. It cleans the blood also. It helps with general inflammation. If you put chickweed with dandelion, with roasted dandelion, it has a nice kind of coffee type of flavor. So those are two good ones to put together. I definitely wouldn't add garlic greens into that one, or mustard garlic either. But that combination in the morning has a nice kind of black coffee feel to it, Chickweed's also good for constipation and dyspepsia, skin ailments, obesity, and regulating the blood sugar as well. So all of these herbs that are coming up this time of year also regulate that blood sugar. Why? Because the season of sweetness is on the horizon, right? Which is summertime. So if you know your major flavors, your major tastes, I should say, all the seasons are coordinated with tastes: astringent, sweet, pungent. Those are all aligned with the various tastes and seasons. So anyway, these plants are growing now because they're preparing us for the season that matches that taste that we need, that stimulation of taste that we need. So everything is very coordinated, of course, and very harmonious and very much in divine flow when we start to pay attention to the circadian rhythms, what's growing naturally around us. And I think a lot of us are starting to recognize that. And how blessed are we, that we're awakening to these things that our ancestors knew about. And we've almost gotten to the point where we've forgotten about them, and that the knowledge is gone forever. But by some streak of whatever, we are here now recognizing that it's essential that we start to cultivate this knowledge and tell others about it. Get our young people out in the forests, get them to shut down their phones and take a walk in the woods and start to look at the different plants that are around us. By the way, speaking of looking at those plants, your garlic mustard grows about 1 foot tall. The leaves are a jagged shape with generally that traditional leaf pattern. I wish I could explain it better. It would be almost like the spade, that spade pattern in cards, with the rounded curve, while the dandelion leaves are more jagged and rigid, and there's many inlets, if you would, with the leaves. The garlic mustard leaves are sticky, and of course it smells like garlic and onions, so you know that one right away by smelling it. The dandelion has the jagged leaves as well, but there are a couple of plants that they're like cousin plants, and they look like dandelion, so be careful with those. And some of them are irritants, so you have to watch. Some of them have little irritants and what am I thinking of the word that the I can't think of it right now. the defense of the plant. I'll come back to it. Maybe I'll look it up. But anyway, the chickweed has white flowers, and those are they grow on mats like a floor mat. They'll make a protective kind of covering of the forest surface, and they have little white flowers on them, and those are about 8 petals on those flowers. And like I said, I'm going to give you the app to look those up. The word I'm looking for that the plants use to protect themselves and give off is, maybe if somebody can help me out and call it in, but I'm not able to find it right now. But what I can find and give you is that plant identification site, which I found to be the best one. I've used it myself, and it's really easy. You don't have to get an account or anything like that. It is identify.plantnet.org, and that's identify.plantnet.org. And this time of year, it's great to be able to use that and walk around into the forest, because all this stuff is blossoming right now. Right. The word I'm thinking of is lectins. Lectins, that's what it is. And those are the sort of acidic properties of plants that protect the plant, and they literally are on the leaves, and they'll jump out at something that attacks the leaf of a plant, almost like little teeth. And they can cause a lot of inflammation in the body, of course. But those lectins are found a lot in the dandelion family, so you have to watch with the leaves. And that's why sometimes the root is preferred. So all that said, I want to open it up at this point and kind of reach out to all of you. I know some of you have been patiently waiting to speak. Maybe some of you are still wanting to hear the Earth, Wind, and Fire that we started out with today and comment on that. Maybe you have something to say about the sleep or some of the herbs we spoke about, or maybe just springtime and what's going on right now. As far as nature and circadian rhythms. If you have anything that you want to speak up or ask about, I would love to hear from you. Feel free to chime in, and I'll open up the lines there for all of you. Go ahead. Anybody?
Hello?
Yes.
Hi, I would like to, you were talking about sleep, and some people stay up late. I notice when I stay up, if I stay up late, I would eat more.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of time I try not to stay up late because I don't want to eat late.
Yeah.
A lot of people are not aware of that. But the later you stay up, that means you're going to have a greater chance of eating something. You don't want to eat something late and go to bed, you know.
Yeah, Michael, thank you. It's so true that, nighttime in general, once that sun goes down, it brings us to this emotional place, and the base of that emotion is fear. And that's a natural, response to the darkness, I think. And what do we do when we're feeling afraid or insecure, or we're feeling like we have some negative emotions to deal with? We combat that. We address it through food. So much of our eating is emotionally based eating, and we have this food anxiety as well mixed in with that. A lot of us come from, you would say, just cyclical, genetic patterns of food anxiety, where we're just used to going to food in times of uncertainty to fill that emotional gap. So it's a great point. Yeah, and the sleep is very much intertwined with our diets and our eating patterns. Great point.
And also, even watching TV is the same thing. It's going to make you eat.
Yeah.
With all the commercials popping up and on.
That's right. One thing leads to another. It really is a snowball effect. The commercials don't help. Great point.
And one more question. You were talking about the lectins on some of the plants. Like, I like dandelion, and I usually juice them. Mm-hmm. I'm not sure if there's more lectins in the juice in the whole plant, or I'm not even sure.
Well, the lectins are usually on the leaves, not so much the flowers or the root, but they're on the leaves, and they're just protect. I mean, they're much more complex than I'm posing them, but they're protective devices. They're proteins, and they defend the plants in nature that cause problems for the creature that's eating them. So nature designed lectins, of course, with that intention in mind. So they resist being broken down in the gut. That's the problem. And a lot of people, for example, will drink excessive amounts of almond milk. And I wanted to mention this at some point. It would, as just an example, but almonds have a lot of lectins on the skin, and not so much in other nuts, but people are moving away from dairy, and they're going to these almond milks, and oftentimes these lower quality brands, and you're really not going to cut down on any inflammation by drinking a lot of almond milk, and because of the lectins that are in it. So it just creates acidic environments. When you have more lectins, it's these lectins, when they're in our system, they're like really miniature fireworks, going off in the system, and they kind of explode, create an acidic environment,
I usually like to make my own almond milk, and I usually soak them.
Soaking.
And I usually peel the skin off.
Yeah, well, taking the skin off, you're good to go. If most people the milks that are made they don't take the liberty of doing that, So, but if you could take the skin off, and if you could soak your greens or soak your dandelion leaves as well in cold water, that should help with some of the lectins. I'm not sure as much. I wouldn't know how much, but I imagine it would help a little bit, which is a great point. Thanks, Michael. Anybody?
You're welcome.
Anybody? Yeah, so we have that identify plant site, and that's one of the great tools that one could say. One could argue that the digital world has brought us, where we can now take a picture of a plant and then figure out which one it is. And our ancestors, of course, didn't have this luxury, and I'm sure many a generation had to die off before they got it right. So what an interesting time that we live here, Nothing good, nothing bad, all part of the big process, but one that is miraculous in many ways. Well, I appreciate having everybody on the line here. I want to just kind of wrap everything up and finish by reminding everyone that my own organization, I don't possess it anyway. I'm really getting conscious about when we say something is ours, but the organization that I'm affiliated with and that I'm trying to direct is called Inner Technology, the Temple of Inner Technology. It's actually a faith-based nonprofit organization named for promoting that innate ability that all of us have to call upon our innate technology, for healing, for guidance, for knowledge. So through this organization, I offer donation-based consultations and classes, and ultimately the main goal of this podcast and everything that I do aligns with the mission of that organization, and of stimulating and bringing us back to that place where we start to find the answers within ourselves and amongst each other, not depend on, I should use the word foreign or alien entities, if you will, entities that we don't know, that we don't understand, that we're not familiar with their intentions, for knowledge and for healing. And that's all I would simply put it, is that we start to look around at each other and join back into the circle of life, into the circle of humanity, and learn from each other, learn from our own generational knowledge and our own DNA and our own experiences as to what works, and start having those conversations again. So I or anyone else cannot do it alone. We've never done it alone. And we need each other. And that's why next week I'll be talking about eco-villaging and collective community efforts that are wedging a hole in the oppressive systems that exist around us. So growing our own food and medicine will be the way of the future. So join me next week as I interview Emiliano Camaga, one of my dear friends who's in Florida. He is a Lakota medicine man and a permaculture entrepreneur. So he helps people, he grows his own food and medicine, and he helps other people do it as well. He teaches them how. Tremendous resource. He's has some amazing perspectives. I've learned so much from him. Also a capoeira angolero, practicer of martial arts, musician, a family man. He's a father and a husband. And he's an indigenous medicine man. So we'll be talking about entrepreneurship, conscious entrepreneurship, indigenous medicine, and community next week. Don't forget, if you're interested in a donation-based consult or anything else that I mentioned on the program, email me. My email is techseca, that is TECHSECA 23@gmail.com. And you can also follow me on Instagram. I'm not one to scroll or post much, but when I do post something, I like to think it has value. That's Instagram handle is @DRERIC, @DRERIC_Biseca, BISECA. And stay tuned, everybody, on Grown Folks Talking. This is an amazing station here, and with some incredible hosts, Michael Tyson being one of them. He's on the line with us right now, has his own community-based health network. His show is on Thursday night. Give him a look if you're interested. Ask about it in the chat or ask me. Stay tuned for the show after this. We have, of course, the Forrest Nance Show, which is one of the featured programs on the channel. Forrest Nance always provides us with some incredible and informative perspectives on very pertinent issues. So stay on board. Stay inward, stay involved, and keep involving, right?
Brother Eric?
Yes, sir.
Good show, brother. Good show. I just wanted to say that.
Thank you.
And I'm waiting for you to end the recording. I want to say something.
Okay, yeah. All right, Ashe, everybody, and be well. Thanks for joining on the line.